Hey, everybody, welcome to episode number 8 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. Did you or are you expecting a tax return this year? If so, you may not want to throw your hands up in celebration just yet because your tax return could be putting more stress on your financial life. And you might be thinking, how in the heck is that possible? Well, stay tuned. We're going to talk about it in this episode.
Welcome to the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we're helping normal, everyday people learn how to save money and kick debt so they can live a happier and stress-free life. Now here's your host, Debt Free Dad, Brad Nelson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's show. You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Brad Nelson, Debt Free Dad. It'd be awesome to connect with you. And in fact, recently we just had our New Year workshop, and a big part of that is people joining our Life Without Payments page. And we had so many, I shouldn't say page, group, our Facebook group. So if you're looking for a great community, go check that out. Life Without Payments, just search it and just request to be added to that group. But we had well over 1,000 people join that group for our New Year workshop, and we have been starting the conversations with a lot of people out there who want to take control of their finances, kick debt and financial stress. So please join us. It's great to meet so many of you out there, and a lot of you I know are starting to listen to our show. So Amber, Ryan, today we're talking about a fabulous topic, and it revolves around taxes. How exciting, right?
That sounds so much fun.
But I think, today's topic is, I think it's a fantastic one. Back in, a while back ago, even before I got out of debt, tax return time for me was a great time of year because when you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're used to not having any money laying around, it was like you hit the jackpot some years, right? Like, hey, we got all this extra money and now we're going to go out and have some fun.
It was like a cash bonus for us.
Yeah.
We were like, woohoo, we got money. How fast can we spend it?
Right. Yeah.
Burned a hole in our pocket.
Did you buy anything cool with your tax return?
I don't know.
No clue.
I can't remember ever one specific thing that I bought with my tax return. We just spent it.
We always had great intentions, but it was always spent like 15 times. We starting in like July of the previous year, we'd just be thinking about, when we get that money back, what are we going to do with it? And when you get it, I got like 10 different things I'm going to do with it already.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's how it worked for me too. There was one thing I can remember. I'm going to be sharing that in later on in this episode that I remember purchasing it, and it changed my personal finances, but for the better. And hopefully that's what today's episode is going to help some of you do, is come up with a plan. So, I've had the privilege of helping many people get on a plan with their finances. In our membership site, Roots Personal Finance, we teach our members, this very simple process through the Debt Freedom Success Path. And we teach them how to budget, start to save, start to crush debt, start to change their mindset when it comes to their finances. And while helping these people and doing one-on-one coaching, I tend to find that many people who are struggling and living paycheck to paycheck are also receiving sometimes a pretty sizable tax refund. And it's not uncommon for me to see, and what I'll have them do is we have them fill out what we call as a financial snapshot. And the financial snapshot just basically has, roughly what they make for a living every year, how much debt that they have. And one of the questions on that financial snapshot is, did you receive a tax return last year? And when I look at those documents, it's not uncommon for me to see $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, sometimes even $8,000, sometimes even more on some of these financial snapshot sheets. And one of the overwhelming responses that I get from the next question I ask them is what I asked kind of what Ryan and Amber here today is, what did you do with your tax return? And most of them have no idea what they've done with their tax return from the previous year. Some of them do, but not all of them. And that's a really bad plan, especially because this is a pretty sizable chunk of money for most people, especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck. So I kind of look at it, Ryan and Amber and I, we were kind of discussing this before we went live here today, is that I look at the tax return as a pretty awesome springboard for most people. And if you're looking to do some of the stuff that we're talking about on this show and starting to budget, building your first emergency fund savings, paying off debt, a tax return can be a really great way to really kind of give you a kickstart to the whole plan. And we're going to be talking about some ideas and some strategies on how you can use that here this year in 2020. So first, before we kind of get into some of the tips on how you can use your tax refund better, let's first kind of discuss what a tax refund is and what a tax refund isn't. Because I think in this day and age, marketing plays a big role in what we perceive some of these things to be. And guys, the commercial that always comes to my mind, and they don't air this anymore, they air similar commercials now, but a couple of years ago, it was one of these kind of big chain tax professional, come in, we'll do your taxes for you. And the commercial kind of starts with this guy who's wearing this aircraft kind of, get up. He's got his flight suit on. He's got his headphones on, kind of like all of us do in this podcast. And he's like yelling into the camera because he's on this big cargo airplane. And in the background of him where he's talking, there's these big, huge cargo boxes full of cash. And they open up the cargo bay door. They push these big boxes out. And they say it's tax refund season, and they're just raining money down below on the neighborhoods, right? And it's a great commercial, great marketing, But I think sometimes these messages can lead us to believe that what a tax refund isn't. And I want to be clear: a tax refund isn't a bonus. It's not a reward. Like, it's not a pat on the back from the government like you had a great year. Like, all it is you overpaid in taxes, right? Did you guys understand that a long time ago, or what did you guys, or did you always know this? Because I think I knew it. I just never really made the connection, like, this has been my money all along, and now I'm just getting it back.
I wouldn't say I had my head in the sand. I had no idea, but I think I just led myself to believe it. It's no different when even to this day, who doesn't like finding an extra $100 in your pants pocket one day, but that's not extra money. So I think it just was this idea that because it was money we never seen when we got it, like it was like free money. We didn't necessarily make that connection that it was our money that we're just getting back.
Right. Yeah. So it's like no different than going to like a big box store and you're going to buy a $15 item or a $25 item. Sorry, I'm trying to do the change in my head so I get this right. A $25 item, and you give them $40, and they're going to give you change back because you overpaid, right? And that's exactly what's happening when it comes to this tax refund. All it means is that throughout the years that you sent the government too much money. And so today we want to kind of talk about how could that be hurting you by sending the government too much money. Well, the first thing is when it comes to, building wealth and growing your money, if you are on a monthly basis, sending the government too much money, all that money is doing for that entire year is sitting. It's not doing anything. You're essentially giving the government an interest-free loan for an entire year, and then they're just going to send it back to you. And that's when you start getting to the point where you're not living paycheck to paycheck, and when you want to start taking your money and making that money build more money or grow, you want to be able to have access to that money sooner rather than later so you can put it into investments and things that are going to allow your money to grow. But when all that money does is just sit there, it gets $0. And for me, I think when I started learning about this personal finance stuff many years ago, it was kind of eye-opening when I started hearing some of these financial experts out there, people I was learning from, that said, you almost want to shoot for zero. You don't want to get any money back, and you also don't want to pay. You want to have almost like a balancing act when it comes to that refund. That means that you're using the money to the best that it can be used throughout the year. And I was kind of looked at it, it's like, well, why would I want to do that? And then when I started looking at compound interest and investing and even high yield savings accounts and things like that where you can actually make money off of your stuff, then it started to make sense to me. It's like, yeah, here I am sending a couple $100 extra a month to the government. I could be putting that into an account that's growing money for me.
Yeah, I never looked at it that way ever. I always got it as, I was always taught that at the end of the year, I'll always get a refund.
Yeah.
And that's just how it's going to work. I never looked at it until I started this financial thing and living financially free. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to let the government hold up because they're going to give it back to me and I'm going to get this bonus. And it's an awesome thing at the end of every year. So for me, I didn't see it as they were just holding my money and giving it back to me.
Yeah.
So,
I think most people are probably in that same boat. I would be willing to bet that most people are probably in that same boat.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of people are they kind of look at it as this, a lot of people, I don't think, admit they're bad with money, but I think they look at it as a forced savings account to make them save money, because they can't do it themselves. And I'm here to tell you, you can do it yourself. You just got to train yourself to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to get into that too. I mean, I think it's a great topic. It's also a good debate, because there are some people that I've worked with that are adamant about it. Like it forces me to put that money away. And, outside of the math and everything we just kind of mentioned, where you're talking about investing and being able to earn interest off of it, I understand the argument when it comes to that, especially if your habits aren't there. So we're going to talk about some strategies if you're not comfortable taking more of those taxes throughout the year. We're going to talk about some strategies on, you can just leave things exactly the same, but you can spread that money out a little bit. Also, another way, or another reason why this tax return could be hurting you is if you are living paycheck to paycheck. So let's say month after month, you have just enough money to cover your bills. Let's say because of that, you're not able to save and put any money away. Or because of that, there are months where you have to use a credit card to get you by. Like an emergency pops up, maybe you got a flat tire, emergency, doctor's visit with your kids, whatever it might be, right? And because things are so tight month to month, that poor cash flow may be causing you to worsen your situation, essentially, by either going into debt or not being able to save. Whereas opposed to if you were to send less in taxes every single month and you were to even that out a little bit more, so you're not getting as much back on your refund, but you're getting more throughout the year, that could prevent you from having to go into debt for certain things, because you're going to have more cash throughout the year. Or it could also help you start to, like Ryan said, create this habit of saving on your own that now you can start using in other areas of your life too, when it comes to budgeting and starting to pay cash for purchases and things like that. So there's definitely some pluses and minuses to the refund. Yeah, it's great that you get this money, but again, if that's making things really tight throughout the year and you're talking 12 months you got to suffer, it can make your finances that much worse as time goes on. All right. The other thing we got to kind of look at too is marketing. And we were kind of just chatting about this before we went live on this podcast today, but talking about marketing, like right now, like we're actually shooting and filming this right now, like just right towards the end of January. And you're already starting to see the ads pop up for how to spend your refund. And, you'll see car ads. And we were just talking about one that I see regularly. It's on the same billboard every single year in my town. It's by this furniture company. And they will put right on the top, hey, it's tax refund season. Come buy your new furniture for a down payment. You get 0% interest on everything else. And, so they know that most people are getting this money and they are after it, right? It's like sharks in the water. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Well, and I think too that it's important for whenever businesses and the business in general knows there's a large percentage of the population that has a huge amount of money, they aren't going to offer you the best deals during that time of year. So this money it's your money again. It's not free money. It's not extra money. It's your money. So if you're going to go, hey, yeah, we're going to go buy new furniture, you might pay 10, 20, 30% more for that same furniture than if you bought it 3 or 6 months later in the year. But because it's tax time, there's not a lot of incentive for them to keep prices low and give great deals. So you're essentially just wasting the money that you quote unquote save for the year by giving it to these businesses because they're overcharging you for the stuff during tax season.
And there's definitely those times of year. Same thing, like, sometimes during the holidays and things, like they even say, like, I mean, a perfect example is some people think the best time to buy like a television is during Black Friday, but it's actually been proven that the best time is like right around the Super Bowl. And so, I mean, yeah, it's the same thing when it comes to those tax returns. Absolutely. So you got to make sure you're being smart with that and understand that these marketing messages are going to pop up. And kind of like what we just opened the show about, talking about, hey, do you remember what you spent it on? Most people can't remember because it's easy to buy into these. And all of a sudden, like Ryan said, he had like 10 things that all of a sudden he wanted to purchase or go after. And these are going to be the same things that you're going to have to be confronted with. And when you don't have a really good plan for that money, you're going to end up like a lot of people wondering where it went. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be back with some tips on how to better use your tax return here coming up in 2020. Hey, many people I work with want to get out of debt. And many of them are also looking for ways to rid themselves of financial stress and finally being able to get to the point where they can start saving some money. Wouldn't that be fantastic? That's why I created this free course, 10 easy money saving ideas that you can start today. Literally, you can start using these tips today. And when you join, you're going to get a free downloadable PDF guide that walks you through all the tips. Not only that, but we're also going to give you 10 video lessons that walk you through every single tip in more detail. Also, we're going to give you some action items that you can start to begin to make some changes that are going to help you save more money and fill up that piggy bank. So head on over to therealdebtfreedad.com, click on tools and courses in the menu, and get free access to this course today. Hey everybody, welcome back. So today we're talking about how your tax refund could be hurting you, and we kind of covered that here in the first segment of today's show. So what we're going to do is take the second half of the show and talk about how you can better use it, or maybe use it more to your advantage, and starting to do a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here. How to learn how to budget better, how to save up and pay cash for purchases, how to save for your emergency fund, how to pay down debt, and getting yourself set up for a fantastic 2020. So what's a better plan? And we do want to offer this disclaimer with some of this kind of ideas and some suggestions that we've got coming up for you is, because we're talking about taxes, I would highly recommend that you work with a tax professional to help you with your taxes. So when it comes to changing your withholdings or looking at your tax situation as a whole, I strongly recommend it. Hire the right people to help you do those things. I think it's going to pay off dividends for you as the years go on, and being able to save you more and more money with your taxes. So please make sure that you, before making any decisions with your taxes, talk to a tax professional. It's one of the best things that you can do as it relates to your taxes, and make sure you don't get yourself in any trouble. So one of the first things that you can look at, if you wanted to say, rather than get this lump sum of money every year, and again, depending on what that amount is, you could look at possibly changing your withholdings. Now, the other thing you want to kind of look at as more of a qualifier for this tip is, are you getting roughly around the same amount of money back each year? So if you look at the last couple of years that you've been filing your taxes, and again, the United States here, they just went through some tax changes a couple of years ago, but is your refund relatively been the same? If it is, that could be a good qualifier, like, yeah, I want to change my withholdings, so that way I send less to taxes per paycheck, and I get more of that money per paycheck to go into my bank account and help us with our financial goals. Now, the key, or the most important thing that you do here, is that you don't adjust it to take all of your refund. Okay, I don't recommend that. I would say you don't want to put yourself into a situation where now you owe taxes and you're still living paycheck to paycheck. That would put people in some bad places. So we're just saying take a portion of it. That would be my recommendation. And I can remember when I walked in many years ago, I was still working at a JOB. I wasn't running this business, and I sat down with the HR department to change my withholdings. And I had to put a ridiculous number on my withholdings in order to get it to even out right. Like, it was almost like a scary number. And they were even looking at me. They're like, Brad, just so you know, nobody puts this many withhold, like, nobody puts that on there. I was like, just do it. I think it's going to work out perfect. And it did that year. The following year, we got more money every single month on our paychecks. And then when we went to go pay taxes, we actually ended up owing a little bit, but it was only a couple $100. It worked out perfect. But again, we kind of looked at the past and said, we've been getting the same amount of money every single year. Let's change our withholdings so that evens out a little bit more. And I got to tell you, that helped dramatically in helping us use that money more to our advantage. And again, saving, paying down debt.
It's funny because I got the total opposite advice growing up when I started to work, and I was working a couple of jobs at a time. They're like, oh, you're not going to have enough taxes taken off. You need to ask them to take off more every month so that you don't end up owing at the end of the year. And then I got a ridiculous amount back every year.
Yeah.
So watch who you take advice from too, because it can be pretty scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I mean, I would even say myself growing up, I wouldn't say people were necessarily just giving that advice, but I remember a lot of times people would just say, oh, claim zero, just claim zero, claim that, This is what you claim. This is what you should claim. And so you just did that because that's what people told you to do. And same thing, you'd end up with this large check at the end of the year. And those people were just doing it because that's what, they were using it as that savings account or using it improperly. And then they were just kind of spreading that, I wouldn't say it's false. It's just, it wasn't necessarily, it might have been helpful to them, but they don't know your situation. So you just took someone's advice and now you have all this money that you don't really need at the end of the year.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, my mindset's way different. Obviously, we run our own businesses. My wife runs her own business. I run my own business. So things are a little bit different. We actually have to pay in quarterly taxes, and we always shoot and aim for actually owing. I'm okay if we owe, because to me, that means that we've used the most or the best way that we've had all that money throughout the year. We've used that the best way we could to put us at more of an advantage throughout the year. Now, again, we're in a much different financial situation than we were 10 years ago when we first started this. So that's why I say, if you're going to go this route, talk to a tax professional. You can also go on the IRS's website. They actually have a withholding calculator on there as well. But using a combination of both, I think you'll find that you're going to probably be better off month to month if you take a little bit more of that money. Now, it brings the debate up, because I've mentioned this to people, and there are some people who are just not comfortable. They are just so used to getting that tax refund every year that they're almost too scared of the idea of not getting it. So the next option that you can take is, if you don't want to change your withholdings, is instead, what I recommend is take that money, that refund every year, and establish a savings account for it. All right. And just put it into a savings account. And one of the coolest things that I've seen people do is they essentially use the same idea of taking it with the withholding side, but instead of changing the withholdings, all they do is they take whatever refund it is, divide it by 12 months, and then they take a certain portion of that every single month and put that into their budget, and they take out of that savings account. So you're kind of doing the same thing. You're just doing it with last year's money. But that could be a great way. And again, if you're getting $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 back a year, I mean, that's several extra $100 every single month that you're now able to put in your budget. And that could be the big difference maker for you, and being able to save, being able to pay down debt, and being able to do the things that you want to do and getting on a plan with your finances. Notice how we're not saying going buying more stuff, right? we're talking about being proactive and getting you to the point where you're improving your financial situation, not necessarily accumulating more things.
To just kind of throw myself out there, who did a lot of the wrong things earlier, is I would highly advise to not, I mean, we used to get the refund and then we put it in our checking account, you know, be like, we had it direct deposited from the IRS right into our checking account. Well, if you're not great with money and you're struggling financially, the worst thing you can do is open up your bank account tomorrow morning and find out, holy cow, I got $8,000 in there. Because that is nothing but a, just that made us spend money, more money than what we should have, because then you start going to the store and you're like, oh, I can buy these shoes. They're $100. I got plenty of money. Yep. And suddenly within 30 days, it's all gone. And maybe even then some of your regular money you didn't even realize you spent, because there's just this feeling of, I have all this money now.
It's funny. It wasn't a tax return that just happened to us. I had to move, because again, we budget, we save money. So we love to camp. So we're big seasonal campers. So we have to, we budget a certain amount every month that goes into a savings account. When it's time to pay our seasonal camping fees, we pay it in cash up front. Well, the other day I had to move that money from our savings account to our checking account, because they wanted a check, and they were charging a fee to use a debit card. And I was like, no, there's no way. I'll just send you a check, because I wanted to save that money. And literally that same afternoon, Sarah, my wife, she opens up our bank app and she's like, why do we have an extra $3,200 in our checking account? What are we going to go shop for? I was like, yeah, that's not in there for that. And you know it. And she was just joking, obviously. But that's so true, though. When you see the money in there, you want to spend it. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of people, right? And I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a lot of couples out there that I've worked with where they say, my spouse or partner, like, if they see any money in the checking account, they'll just spend it. Even if that money's already got a name, like it's going to a car payment or it's going to the electric bill, like they have that impulsiveness where they just got to go out and spend the money. So you're right. Yeah. You got to be real careful with it. Some other things that obviously you can do is pay down some debts. One of the things that I did back when I first started on this plan that we're now teaching so many people to do is I used our tax refund to really kind of catapult our financial plan forward. So one of the things that I did is I actually used, it was a good portion. I want to say, if I go back, it was about $5,000 return that we had gotten. And it was long before I had changed my withholdings that we did the previous, or that following next year. And what I did is I took that return and I bought myself a used car. and it was like it was a $3,000 1996 Toyota Corolla. And if you've listened to my podcast or seen any of my stuff online, I talk about this car a lot because I'm proud of that car. It was my get out of debt car. It was the change my life car. And I took that, bought that car, and then sold a car that we were having a car payment of $500 a month on. And we reduced our debt by $12,000. And then I not only reduced our debt by $12,000, but I also was able to take back $500 a month for that car payment because now I had a paid for car. Now, sure, it wasn't the greatest looking car. It wasn't super amazing looking, but it got its job done, and I drove that car for the next 4 years. And I can tell you that was probably one of the best financial decisions that I'd ever made to help me get out of debt. And it completely changed my mindset about what I was doing with my money and how really unimportant cars are. We're going to have a whole car episode coming up in the next few shows, but that could be something that you could look at. How can we use our tax return to better our situation? Again, not to accumulate more stuff, but how can we use it to, again, build that first emergency fund, pay down certain debts. Maybe you look at high interest debts that you have that you could clear out. Maybe those have high minimum payments, but we would just strongly recommend take it as an opportunity if you're getting a refund this year to look at how you can use that to better your overall financial life. And if you do take the time, I think you're going to be fine that you're going to be much better for it. And a year from now, you're going to look back and say, that was a critical decision that we made that really improved everything for us.
Hey, what's this I see? I thought this was a party! Let's dance!
All right, so all of you know that Kevin Bacon means it's time to do some celebrations of the show. And I got to tell you, over the last couple of weeks, man, we have been getting some fantastic celebrations, not only in the Roots community, but also in our Life Without Payments Facebook page. It is so encouraging to see so many of you taking some action earlier here in this year. And that's awesome. Very encouraging. It almost, I never want to be back in debt, but sometimes I almost want to go back to paying off debt because how much fun it was. It's just fun to win and to change that mentality from losing to winning. It really, really is. So the first celebration we have is Lori McAllister. She paid off 2 credit cards. Paid minimum started at $100 in her emergency fund. Budgets have been going strong for 5 months. Consistency, she mentions. It is getting easier, changing habits and booking parties. Following up feels so good. Congratulations to you, Lori. That's awesome.
And Destiny Burnett joined on Monday. So far, she says we have cut more than $175 a month out of their budget by canceling subscription plans, cell phones, and cable bill reductions. This is going to change our lives, she says.
No kidding, right? And she just joined our program, and that, like, literally a day later, she had already made those decisions just within a day. There's power in just making that decision of I'm going to do something about this, and then taking action after that. And that's proof. That's awesome. Good for her.
Diana Mitchell says paid $810 to a student loan. Only 2 more payments to go, and it is gone.
Yeah, that's got to feel pretty amazing. Most people, like, when we ask them what's the number one debt you'd like to get rid of, a lot of people say those student loans. So that's awesome. Good for her. And then Shannon Liardi, I paid off a credit card. Also sat down with the hubs, as she says, and wrote down some serious financial goals for 2020. So congratulations to you, Shannon. Congratulations to all of you who are working so hard. Hey, so do you have a question about your finances? If so, send me an email at brad@therealdebtfreedad.com, and we will do our best to get your question on an upcoming episode of the Debt Free Dad podcast. So here is the question of the day. I just paid off my credit card. Should I close the account or keep it open? I've heard it will affect my credit score. All right, guys. So this is a hot topic. Mm-hmm. So what would you, knowing where you guys came from, how did you guys, and again, without me saying what I would do, I'm just interested, how did you guys do this? Did you guys decide to close cards? And what was the mentality of keeping them open, closing them? What were your thoughts?
We closed some, not all.
Yeah.
And ours was just, we didn't want to have that temptation anymore. Because it's easy. I could cut it up, but I could also call and get a new one. So
yeah, right.
I just needed it to be gone. And my thought I've heard different things as far as the credit score. I don't follow the credit score. I'm no expert on the credit score, but I've heard that if you have too much credit open as well, it can hurt your score. So I would just close it.
Yeah. Mostly for the temptation side, right?
Yeah.
By the way, when you say cut up your card, if you don't close it, especially if it's like a major credit card, we've had members who have because they've closed them for the same reason. Like, I just don't want the temptation anymore. They've actually had members. We've had members that the card company sends them another card. When that last one expires, they'll send them another one. And so yeah, it's not always just cutting it up. That's for sure.
We never really made it a point to close any of them. I don't want it. Well, I mean, probably early on, it was something that motivated us because, we were paying off debt. And I've explained early in our earlier podcasts, early in our process, our goal of getting out of debt was so then we could go buy more stuff, was try to get out of debt. So the idea at first and seeing that credit score go up was somewhat of a motivating factor. After a while, and we developed the right habits, I mean, it doesn't matter to me anymore. So to me, it's just, you got to know yourself. I mean, once we hit that peak where we're going to do this the right way, we knew we weren't going to be tempted anymore. But if you feel like that is something that's going to tempt you, then I would agree with Amber, just close it, because then you can't be tempted. So It really is going to depend from person to person on where you're at in your journey.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there are some people who draw a hard line here, and they throw out the human side to it, and I think that's wrong. You'll hear some financial experts out there who say, no, don't close it. Like, that's a bad plan. That's bad for your finances. It's bad for your credit score. But at the same time, if that same person has been having some behavior issues, habit issues, where again, they're very similar to some of us, where, we would pay off debt, but then find ourselves right back into it, that's also just as dangerous. Like, that's not a good plan either. So I think it all depends on you and where your habits lie. If you're comfortable enough having that card handy and it's not causing you any temptation and you want to keep it open, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. To answer your question, can it affect your credit score? Sure, it can. How much? We don't really know. It's different for everybody because it's all going to be based on really what you're losing is the credit history from that account. So if someone were to close a credit card that they've had for 10 years as opposed to a card that they've had for only 6 months, that's going to affect your score differently. How much debt that you have and all of that other stuff is going to affect it. But it can potentially harm your score when you close that card, for sure. But at the same time, you need to look at your financial health as a whole. And a credit score at the end of the day, and we're going to have we're going to have a podcast episode just talking about the credit score. A credit score at the end of the day is really just judging you how well you are a customer of handling debt and payments. That's really all it is at the end of the day. And if you have a really hard time with that right now, I really don't think a credit score should be your top priority because you're already deep into debt. You're already living paycheck to paycheck. Do you really need to improve your score more to accumulate more debt? Not so much, right? So I'm going to look at this and say, I'm going to look at the human side. I'm going to look at kind of the financial side. And I'm always a fan, like if you're not comfortable having that card, you don't trust yourself, I say close it. But if you're on the other side where, like Ryan said, where they've kind of adjusted their habits, they've adjusted their mindset, credit cards aren't nearly as much of a temptation anymore, then, it's okay to keep it open as well. So I think you just got to look at your situation and do what's best for you and not what other people say is best for you. You got to decide what's right for you. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us here today. We love your feedback, and it also helps us grow our podcast. We've been getting some great feedback about the show. We've also had a little bit of negative feedback about the show, and that's totally okay. But please leave us an honest review on Apple Podcasts. We read every single one of those. And as you know, the Debt Free Dad podcast is here to help you live a happier and stress-free financial life. And if you know someone who could benefit from some of the basic financial advice that we're offering in our show, please give us a share. We appreciate you. And we will see you all in our next episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast. For more free resources to kick debt and financial stress, head over to therealdebtfreedad.com.